The notice came folded in thirds, tucked crooked in the mailbox like it was ashamed of itself. Marcus didn't open it right away. He already knew what it was. The paper felt like all the others, thin, slightly waxy, with the same heavy, bold font. Across the top, Notice of HOA Violation. He held it in his hand while watching his son through the living room window, where the sunlight fell soft over the new wooden ramp they'd built together last Saturday. Devon was wheeling himself down, it now slow and focused, his brows furrowed in playful concentration. The incline was mild, the railing solid. It matched the house, it matched the neighborhood, it was built to code, but it didn't match their expectations. Marcus finally opened the letter. As per Article 7, Section 3 of the Evergreen Estates, Community Design Code, all exterior structural modifications require prior approval from the Architectural Review Board, ARB. Failure to do so has resulted in a formal violation. You have 10 days to remove the unauthorized structure. He reread the last line once, then again. Then he placed the letter carefully on the kitchen counter, exhaled slowly through his nose, and whispered, "To no one. Here we go again." 3 days later, he sat quietly in the HOA meeting, dressed in his work clothes, clean jeans, grey pullover, and boots still dusty with concrete from the job site. He sat in the back, said nothing. The room was mostly older homeowners. 2 of the board members barely looked up from their notes. Only Sheila Garrison, the HOA president, made eye contact, and only once like she regretted it immediately. They didn't say his name, didn't mention the letter. But under new business, a slide came up about unapproved property, modifications. There was a blurry photo on the screen. His ramp. Someone had taken it from across the street. "While we respect all homeowners' concerns," Sheila said with that brittle politeness some people weaponized like a badge, "we must maintain uniformity in community standards. There are other solutions to accessibility that don't involve permanent structures visible from the curb." A few heads nodded. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered, "Slippery slope." Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, didn't remind them that his son hadn't been able to leave the house on his own since winter. Didn't tell them he'd emailed them last year, offering his services as a civil engineer to volunteer for the ARB, and they never replied. Didn't explain that the ramp was temporary removable, built with pressure-treated pine and marine-grade screws, because he'd designed ramps for hospitals, not just homes. He just sat there, took a quiet breath, and let them finish. When it was over, he walked past the snack table, ignored the tray of stale cookies, and stepped out into the cool evening air. His neighbor, Carla, the young woman 2 houses down with the camera always, slung across her shoulder, was waiting by the walkway. She looked at him, her eyes narrowed. "I saw the letter," she said. "You mind if I ask something?" Marcus paused. Carla tilted her head. "You ever think about telling your side of this?" He looked up just as the porch light flicked on behind her. His son's silhouette sat at the top of the ramp, watching. Then Marcus turned back to her, slow and calm. "Only once," he said. But they weren't listening. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He wasn't angry. Not the way they expected. Anger was loud, impulsive, irrational. It left papers crumpled, voicemails cursed out, voices raised. He was past all that. Long past it. What lived in him now was quieter, like water running under a frozen pond. Cold, slow, certain. The next morning, before the sun finished rising, he pulled out the folder he kept tucked beneath the kitchen sink, the one labeled House HOA. Inside were blueprints, receipts, time-stamped photos, city permits, and a signed physician's letter confirming Devon's condition. He wasn't building a castle. He was giving his son a way out of the house. The folder slid neatly into his work bag, right next to his laptop, and the hard hat marked M. Lewis, P.E. By mid-morning, Carla was back on his porch with a camera slung around her neck and a tripod in hand. Her father, Mr. Baines, was a Gulf War vet and one of the few white neighbors who never flinched when Marcus spoke with his full voice. She didn't ask again. "Just pointed toward the ramp. Mind if I shoot?" Marcus glanced at Devon, who peeked through the living room curtain, nose smudging the glass. He gave a single nod. "Just no photos of my boy's face. Not yet." "Understood." Click. Click. The shutter snapped gently like someone tiptoeing through a memory. Carla crouched low, got the angle from the bottom of the incline, caught the curvature of the handrails, and the way they met the porch trim without clashing. "Did you design this?" she asked. Marcus raised an eyebrow, half smiling. "I design trauma hospitals in cities that pretend people don't get shot," he said flatly. "A ramp for my son. That was the easy part." Carla didn't laugh. She lowered the camera. "They don't know that, do they?" He didn't answer, but the silence between them said enough. That afternoon, Sheila sent another letter, this one printed in thick red ink. "Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in escalating fines." She'd hand-delivered it, didn't ring the bell, didn't look up at the window where Devon watched, chin resting on the sill. Marcus waited until she'd walked halfway back down the street before opening the door. He didn't call after her. He just stepped out, slow and calm, holding his phone in one hand. The screen was still open to the email he'd sent the Department of Housing and Urban Development that morning. Attached, 10 photographs, 6 documents, a time-stamped video, and the HOA bylaws, all 3 PDFs. Subject line: Violation of ADA Title III by Evergreen Estates, HOA. By dusk, the wind had picked up. Marcus sat on the porch with his coffee, slow sipping from his battered steel thermos. He didn't smile when he saw Sheila pull into her driveway across the cul-de-sac, but he didn't look away either. She paused when she saw him, hands tightening on her purse strap, like the weight of her own rules suddenly felt heavier. Carla had posted the article an hour earlier. The headline was short: "He built a ramp so his son could leave the house. The HOA called it a violation." And right beneath it, a photo of the ramp, bathed in gold evening light. The top comment already had won 400 likes. They should be thanking him, not fining him. Inside the house, Devon was quietly building a Lego set in the den, the open door letting in the last of the orange sun. Marcus stepped inside, slid the HOA letter into a drawer without looking at it, and knelt beside his son. "You good?" he asked. Devon nodded. "Yeah, people at school saw the ramp online. Some of them said it was cool." Marcus kissed the top of his head. "It is cool," he said. Then he stood, calm, measured, and let the internet do what it does best. By the time the HOA held its next meeting, the parking lot was full. Not with residents, though a few did come early, folding chairs in hand and eyebrows knitted with concern, but with 2 vans from local news stations, their logos plastered across windshields and side panels like open wounds. Channel 8 Action News and 4 Watch Investigates. Marcus hadn't invited them. He didn't need to. The story had traveled on its own, retweeted by a disability rights group, reposted by a local council member, stitched into a viral TikTok by a law student who quoted the Americans with Disabilities Act word for word, while pointing to a screenshot of Sheila's violation letter. Inside the clubhouse, Sheila looked paler than usual, her lipstick drawn tight. She wore pearls tonight, a cream-colored blouse ironed stiff at the collar. A clipboard trembled in her hand when she motioned for order. Let's begin." The camera crews were already rolling. No red light needed. You could feel their gaze like heat on the back of every neck in the room. Marcus sat in the second row, not the back this time. Devon wasn't with him. Too many flashing lights. Too much noise. Carla had offered to stay home and hang out with him, brought her laptop and promised they'd build a photo portfolio together. But Marcus was here, and tonight they couldn't pretend not to see him. "We'd like to address some recent misunderstandings," Sheila began, glancing once at the cameras, then again at the clipboard like it might protect her. "The HOA values accessibility and inclusion, always. Our letter was not a reflection of personal beliefs, but rather a procedural oversight tied to the required permitting process." A woman in the crowd cleared her throat, loud and deliberate. "You sent him a fine, Sheila, not a welcome mat." Someone else muttered, "Yeah, and called it a visual disruption." Sheila's smile cracked at the edges. Marcus stayed quiet, not because he didn't have something to say, but because he'd already said it. And now other voices were rising without him having to lift his own. Outside, Devon's ramp had a new guest, a laminated copy of the ADA Title III clause zip-tied to the top railing. Carla's idea: "No person shall be discriminated against on the basis of disability." Underneath it, someone had laid a bouquet of flowers in a paper cone. No card, just marigolds. Back inside, a reporter raised his hand. "Mr. Lewis," he asked, turning toward him without pretense, "would you like to share anything with the board tonight?" Marcus met his gaze, then turned slowly to Sheila. "I offered to volunteer on your board last year," he said. "Told you what I do. Told you who I am." No one answered. Silence. "I built something safe for my child. I didn't ask permission because I didn't think I needed it to make sure my son could leave his home with dignity." Another pause. He added softly, almost too soft for the microphone, "I don't owe an apology for that, but you might." Sheila opened her mouth, but whatever came to the surface never left her lips. She just stood there, shrinking by degrees. Marcus stood, took the folder from his bag, laid it flat on the edge of the podium. Every document in order, every inspection passed, every measurement exact. "Already submitted this to HUD," he said, "and the State Housing Authority. I'll let them take it from here." Then he nodded once to the board, the room, the cameras, and left the meeting as quietly as he'd entered. Outside, the air smelled like cut grass and warm rain. Carla stood near his driveway, holding Devon's tablet in one hand and waving with the other. "You saw that?" Marcus asked, unlocking the door. She grinned. "We watched the live stream. Devon said you looked like a judge." Marcus let out the smallest laugh. "Funny. They thought I was a threat," he murmured almost to himself, "but all I ever wanted was a way out the front door." A week passed. The ramp stayed. The fines stopped. And the silence that followed. That wasn't peace. It was pressure. The HOA board didn't issue a public apology, but the website quietly updated their guidelines under a new tab. Accessibility, Accommodations and Procedures, revised. Sheila's name was still listed as president, but now under it read, Board Member Liaison for Community Relations. A demotion that didn't announce itself, but said everything. Marcus didn't gloat, he didn't need to. The emails started trickling in instead. "Mr. Lewis, I saw the segment. My mom uses a walker now. Would you mind looking at our steps? Hey, man, I know we've never talked, but that ramp? Beautiful work. And I didn't know you were a civil engineer. I made some assumptions. If you ever want to run for board next cycle, you've got my vote." He answered each one slowly, kindly, but with reserve, the kind you build after years of swallowing doubt in other people's voices. Devon rolled down the ramp himself that Friday all the way to the mailbox. Marcus watched from the porch, hands on his hips, mouth tugged into that rare, quiet smile that only ever showed up when he forgot to guard it. Devon reached in and pulled out a bright orange envelope, Carla's handwriting on the front, for the future engineer. Inside, a USB drive and a typed, Note, here's the footage, edited and captioned. The world deserves to see it from your side, not just theirs. See. That night, Marcus sat in the den with the lights low, the video glowing on his laptop screen. It wasn't flashy, no dramatic music, no angry narration, just clips, still photos of the ramp being built. Devon practicing down it, his hands careful, on the wheels. Shots of the HOA letter against the backdrop of a clean, safe home. A soft voice reading the ADA code over top it all. Then the last frame. A freeze on Marcus at the podium, not yelling, not pleading, just standing there. Folder. In hand, eyes steady. The final text read, "Designed by a father, denied by a board, protected by the law." He posted it quietly on his professional account. Didn't tag anyone. Didn't add a caption. Just let the truth stand on its own. By Monday, the video had 86,000 views, then 240,000. By Wednesday, a disability advocacy group emailed asking if they could share it during a town hall. On Thursday, a university architecture department reached out. They wanted Marcus to guest speak for their senior capstone students on the ethics of public design. That weekend, Marcus mowed his lawn like usual, waved at neighbors he'd never spoken to before. The air was warmer now, softer even, as he finished up near the front path. A small voice called out from across the street, "Mr. Marcus!" A little boy in a power chair waved hard from his driveway, his mom beside him smiling nervously. Their house had stairs, steep ones. Marcus glanced, at the front, then back at them. "Y'all need a ramp?" he asked, walking over. The mother's eyes filled before her mouth could form the word. He nodded once. "I'll draw it up this week." The second ramp wasn't for Devon. It was for Malik, the boy across the street, who loved dinosaurs and couldn't quite pronounce Marcus's name without adding Mr. in front of it, like it was part of the blueprint. Malik's mother, Rena, had been trying to get approval for a ramp since last fall. The HOA never rejected her. They just kept requesting revisions, each one more arbitrary than the last. They asked for matching wood grain, then for a less clinical design, then for landscaping plans, then silence when Marcus sent in his design under his name. It was approved in under 48 hours. No questions, no edits, just a boilerplate. "Thank you for your contribution to neighborhood accessibility." Rena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I sent them this same thing in January," she whispered, holding the approval notice with both hands like it might crumble. Marcus didn't say, "I know." He didn't need to. He just picked a start date and showed up with lumber before 8 a.m. that Saturday. Devon helped this time too, holding levelers, sorting screws. Carla came by with her camera again, documenting the build with long, respectful distance. Even the neighbors who'd once crossed the street to avoid Marcus now came out with bottled water, folding chairs and shade umbrellas, like it was a community event. By mid-afternoon, the frame was up. By sunset, the ramp stood, smooth, sturdy, finished with a protective seal that shimmered in the late light. And that's when Sheila walked by. She didn't say anything at first. She just slowed down at the end of the sidewalk, watching. Marcus noticed her, but didn't stop drilling. When he did look up, he wiped his hands on his jeans and said, without flinching, "Evening." She nodded. Just once. "I see you've found quite a bit of support." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I didn't ask for support, I just stopped asking for permission." Her jaw tightened, but her eyes didn't hold the same superiority as before. There was something smaller there now, something uneasy. "Well," she said, softening her voice, "the board would like to formally recognize your contributions at the next meeting." Marcus paused, then said carefully, "I'm not looking for a plaque, if that's what you mean." She offered a thin smile. "No, just acknowledgement." He looked past her to where Malik was rolling back and forth on the new ramp, whooping. Like he'd grown wings, then looked back at her. "You sure it's acknowledgement you want? Because all I ever asked for was access." That night Marcus sat on the porch again, this time beside Rena. 2 lawn chairs, 2 mugs, 2 deep exhales. "We should have had this years ago," she said. "Yeah," Marcus replied. "But they never imagined people like us could build something this visible." Rena chuckled. "Well, we did." Across the street, the porch light flicked on. Malik waved. So did Devon. They didn't look like 2 kids burdened by battles their parents had to fight. They looked like boys with freedom. Freedom that began at the top of a ramp. It was late Sunday evening when Marcus received the email. Subject line: Special Agenda Item, June HOA Meeting. No greeting, no signature, just an attachment. He opened it. Proposal to establish a unified home design oversight committee. Beneath it, legalese soaked in friendly phrasing. To maintain aesthetic consistency. To avoid fragmented interpretations of accessibility needs. Standardization protocols. It was a wall of language designed to look neutral, but Marcus had read enough zoning ordinances in his time to know a trap when he saw one. They weren't trying to block ramps anymore. They were trying to control them. Marcus forwarded the email to Carla. 10 minutes later she called. "They're trying to package discrimination as procedure," she said. "That clause on pre-authorized third-party contractors only, that's a backdoor ban on you." Marcus didn't answer right away. He sat at the kitchen table, hand cupped around a chipped mug of black tea. Devon's backpack sat on the floor nearby, half unzipped, a Lego tire poking out. "They're not fighting me anymore," he finally said. "They're fighting what I represent." Carla's voice was calm. "You ready to fight back?" He looked at the folder still sitting in the drawer. "No," he said. "I'm ready to speak up." The next HOA meeting wasn't held at the clubhouse. Too many people had RSVP'd. They moved it to the local high school gym. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed to see the room before the performance began. He walked the floor, counted the rows, watched as folding chairs multiplied in every direction like a congregation forming around a cause. Rena arrived first, then Mr. Baines, then a father in a wheelchair with a service dog, then a mother carrying blueprints. Carla brought her camera. But this time she wasn't behind it. She stood at the front, microphone in hand, voice clear. "Before the board votes on any new oversight committee, I'd like to share a short video." The screen flickered to life behind her. Marcus recognized the clips, his hands sawing wood. Devon wheeling himself out the front door, Malik laughing as the sun hit the new ramp just right. Then, over it, Carla's voice. They called it a disruption. But what they saw as disruption was actually design. Function, care, and freedom, disguised as an eyesore to those who never needed it. There was no applause, not right away, just quiet. That deep, sacred kind of silence that happens when a room understands what it's been pretending not to. When Sheila took the mic, her voice shook just enough to betray the tension behind her blazer. "The board some appreciates the passion in this room, and we recognize past blind spots. But we also have a duty to preserve standards." "Whose standards?" someone called out. Sheila flinched. Marcus stood, walked to the front without invitation. No notes, no slideshow. He looked straight ahead, then spoke like an architect reads blueprints. Slow, deliberate, exact. "I've spent 17 years designing accessible spaces," he said. "Hospitals, transit hubs, schools. You know what the first step in every design is? Silence. It's listening to the people who actually live in the space. You don't build anything real until you do that." He held up the HOA's new proposal, then let it fall soft as paper into the trash can beside the podium. People didn't cheer. They stood one by one. Devon, sitting near the front with Rena and Malik, reached over and gripped his mother's hand. That night Marcus walked home with no words left in his mouth. Just breath. Just stillness. The ramps were still there, but now they felt like monuments. 2 weeks after the gym meeting, the HOA bylaws were amended, not quietly this time. The amendment had a name now, the Lewis Accessibility Clause. It mandated that any structural additions made for verified medical necessity were to be automatically exempt from architectural review, provided they met local safety codes. It was the first unanimous vote in the board's recent history, and the first time Sheila wasn't the one to present the motion. That honor went to Mr. Baines. Marcus didn't attend the vote. He didn't need to. He was home, finishing up a final coat of sealant on Malik's ramp. Devon sat beside him on the porch, sketchbook on his knees, drawing a side-view blueprint of the house across the street. "You labeled the screws?" Marcus asked, smiling. "Yeah," Devon said, tongue poking out the side of his mouth as he drew. "'Cause if I want to build my own, I gotta know why it holds." Marcus blinked once, harder than usual, then nodded. "That's right." Later that night, Rena brought over a pie. She didn't explain what it was for. She didn't need to. It sat untouched on the counter as the kids played in the next room and the grown-ups sat in the kind of silence that didn't demand conversation, just presence. That kind of silence was earned. The next morning, Marcus, I received a letter in the mail, but this one wasn't folded in anger or printed with warnings. It was handwritten, neat cursive, from a woman named Arlene Dawson, HOA president of a subdivision 2 towns over. Saw the coverage. "We've been trying to update our bylaws too, and your name keeps coming up. Any chance you'd be willing to speak with our board about equitable design? I know this wasn't something you asked for, but it is something you built. Let me know. With respect, A. Dawson." He placed the letter beside Devon's sketchbook, still open on the table. That weekend, Carla hosted a small screening in the community center, the same center that once denied Marcus's request to build a shaded bench near the playground. Now, the chairs were full. Parents, kids, board members, and builders sat side by side watching the short film she and Devon had co-edited. Ramp Nation, a gentle name. But powerful. After it ended, no one clapped right away. Someone sniffled. Then a child, maybe 6 or 7, raised their hand and asked, "Can we make one for my grandma's house too?" Carla looked at Marcus. He smiled. "Yeah," he said, soft and certain. "We can draw that up." Outside, the ramps stood still, but they weren't just pathways anymore. They were promises that no one would be asked to shrink to fit a place they called home. Summer came slow that year, the kind of slow where daylight stretched longer than usual, where breezes carried the sound of laughter instead of warnings, the kind of slow that felt earned. Marcus stood on his porch one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, watching Devon and Malik race each other, one ramp to another, like the world had always been shaped with them in mind. Behind him, the house felt lighter. The heaviness that once lived in the walls, that watch your back, don't make noise kind of tension, had left, like mold stripped from a ceiling. The HOA sent another letter, but this time it was handwritten on cardstock, with a watermark. It read, "Dear Mr. Lewis, on behalf of the Evergreen Estates Board, we want to sincerely thank you for your unwavering advocacy and service to our community. Your integrity and calm leadership have not only transformed our policies, but reshaped the heart of our neighborhood. We formally invite you to serve as an honorary advisor to the Accessibility Committee, should you wish. Regardless of your decision, know that the path you paved will remain." Warmly, Evergreen Estates Ho Marcus didn't write back. He showed up instead, not to speak, just to sit and watch. At the next board meeting, he took a back row seat as a young couple presented plans for a backyard lift for their aging father. No tension, no debate. Approved in 6 minutes. On his way out, Sheila caught his eye. She'd aged since that first meeting, or maybe just dropped the armor. Her smile didn't stretch anymore. It softened. "I was wrong," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. To know. Then he held the door for her as she walked out first. Months later, Devon submitted a school project titled, "What My Dad Built." It didn't start with the ramp. It started with a drawing of their front door open wide with light spilling out. "My dad made something that helped me leave the house," he wrote. "But what he really built was a reason to come back to. Sometimes justice is loud. Sometimes it comes in lawsuits and cameras and public shame. But sometimes it's quiet, like wood pressed smooth beneath a palm, like wheels rolling steady over something permanent, like the sound of a door opening, and no one questioning why you needed it that way." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He built something they couldn't ignore, and in the end it stood, not just the ramp but the truth, something you could stand on, or roll over, or build from, whatever you needed, without asking permission.